Girl, let me tell you about the text message that changed my entire life. One minute I'm running board meetings in my Louboutins, the next I'm standing on some stranger's porch at midnight because he accidentally sent me a message meant for someone else. And honey, what I found there? I wasn't ready. Before we dive into this wild story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because you're not gonna believe where this goes. Drop a comment if you've ever had a wrong number situation. Now, let me tell you how this started. It was a Tuesday night, which meant I was exactly where I always was, sitting in my penthouse office overlooking the city, surrounded by fabric samples and financial reports. My name is Simone Laurent, and at 34 years old, I'd built one of the most successful luxury fashion brands in the country. My designs were worn by celebrities, my boutiques were in every major city, and my bank account had more zeros than I could have dreamed of as a little girl growing up in Atlanta. But that Tuesday night, sitting there at 11:30 with cold coffee and tired eyes, I felt every bit as lonely as those zeros looked. Empty circles going on forever. My phone buzzed on the glass desk, and I almost ignored it. Another email, probably. Another crisis that couldn't wait until morning. But when I glanced at the screen, it wasn't an email. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, and honey, the message made me pause. Hey, I know it's late, but Chloe's having a really rough night. The fever's back up and she keeps asking for you. I hate to bother you, but could you possibly come by tomorrow morning instead of afternoon? I'll pay you extra. I just think she needs some consistency right now and you're so good with her. Thank you for everything you do for us. Now, I should have just responded with a quick wrong number and gone back to my work. That's what the old Simone would have done. But something about that message hit different, the tenderness in it, the vulnerability of a parent clearly at the end of their rope. I found myself typing back before I could overthink it. I think you've got the wrong number. But I hope Chloe feels better soon. Sounds like she's lucky to have someone who cares so much. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message came through. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I meant to text my neighbor who watches Chloe sometimes. This is embarrassing. But thank you for being kind about it. Most people would have just cursed me out for texting this late. I laughed out loud in my empty office, the sound strange and unfamiliar. When was the last time I'd actually laughed? I typed back, no worries, late night here too. What's wrong with Chloe, if you don't mind me asking? And just like that, I was in a conversation with a complete stranger. His name was Terrence, but everyone called him TJ. Chloe was his 6-year-old daughter who'd caught some kind of bug from school. He was up with her, trying to get the fever down, feeling helpless the way parents do when their babies are sick. He told me he was a single dad, doing this alone, and something in the way he texted, honest, unguarded, real, kept me responding. We texted back and forth for 20 minutes, and I forgot all about the reports on my desk. Then he said something that changed everything. Sorry, I should let you go. I'm sure you've got better things to do than talk to a random wrong number at midnight, but this actually helped, talking to someone. Feels less scary when you're not alone with it, you know? I knew exactly what he meant. I'd spent 3 years at the top of my industry, surrounded by employees and business partners, and people who wanted things from me. And I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt less alone. Something came over me, something I still can't fully explain. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the loneliness finally cracking through my carefully constructed armor. Maybe it was God pushing me toward something I didn't know I needed. I typed, "What's your address?" Even through text, I could feel his confusion. What? Why? I'm in the neighborhood. I could drop off some children's medicine, the good stuff that actually works. That was a lie. I wasn't in the neighborhood at all. He lived in a working-class area about 40 minutes from my penthouse. But before he could respond, before I could talk myself out of it, I was grabbing my keys and heading to the elevator. I stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy on the way, standing in the fluorescent lights in my designer casual wear. You know, the kind of casual that costs more than most people's rent, buying children's fever reducer and immune support gummies. The cashier looked at me like I was crazy, and honestly, maybe I was. The whole drive over, I kept asking myself what I was doing. Simone Laurent doesn't drive to strangers' houses at midnight. Simone Laurent doesn't make impulsive decisions. Simone Laurent built her empire on careful planning, strategic thinking, and always staying 3 steps ahead. But something about those texts, about his raw honesty, about a little girl named Chloe who needed her daddy and didn't care about business plans or profit margins, it pulled at something deep in my chest that I'd been ignoring for years. I pulled up to a modest apartment complex just after midnight, the kind of place with a small playground out front and flowers in window boxes, full of life and love even if it wasn't fancy. My hands were actually shaking as I walked up to apartment 2C and knocked softly, not wanting to wake the neighbors. Within seconds, the door opened, and there he was. TJ was about 6 feet tall, with warm brown skin and the kind of eyes that held stories. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a faded Howard University t-shirt, and his locks were pulled back in a ponytail. He looked exhausted and worried and completely, devastatingly real. And the way he looked at me, with shock and something else I couldn't quite name, made my heart do something it hadn't done in years. "You actually came," he said, his voice soft with disbelief. "I said I would," I replied, holding up the pharmacy bag. "The good stuff." From inside the apartment, I heard a small voice call out, "Daddy, who's there?" And TJ's whole face transformed with this protective tenderness that made my chest tight. "Just a friend, baby girl. Try to rest." He turned back to me, stepping aside. "Do you want to come in? I mean, you drove all the way here. I don't even know what to say." I should have handed him the bag and left. Should have maintained some mystery, some distance. Instead, I stepped inside his world. And honey, everything changed. His apartment was small but immaculate. There were drawings covering the refrigerator, a pink backpack by the door, and photos everywhere, moments of joy frozen in time. I could see Chloe on the couch, wrapped in a purple blanket covered in butterflies, her little face flushed with fever. She looked up at me with curious brown eyes, and I felt my carefully constructed walls crack a little more. "Hi, Chloe," I said, surprising myself with how natural it felt. "Your daddy told me you're not feeling good. I brought you some medicine that's going to help." She studied me seriously, then said, "You're pretty." "Are you my daddy's girlfriend?" TJ looked mortified. "Chloe, baby, no, we just met. She's being nice." He looked at me apologetically. "I'm so sorry." But I laughed, really laughed, and sat down on the edge of the couch. "Well, we did just meet, so not yet. But I do think your daddy's pretty great for taking such good care of you." The next 3 hours passed like minutes. I helped TJ get the medicine into Chloe, and we talked while she drifted back to sleep. He told me about his late wife, Angela, who'd passed 3 years ago from complications during what should have been a routine surgery. He told me about rebuilding his life around Chloe, working as a freelance graphic designer so he could be home with her, about the juggling act of being both parents and praying every day that he was enough. He told me about the fear that lived in his chest, that he'd mess this up, that she'd grow up and realize she deserved better than his best attempts. And I told him things I'd never told anyone. About how success felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. About how I'd sacrificed relationships and friendships and everything soft in pursuit of building something great, and now that I had it, I wasn't sure what it was for. About how I couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at me and seen Simone instead of the brand, the business, the dollar signs. When I finally left around 3 in the morning, standing on his porch in the quiet darkness, he took my hand gently. "Thank you," he said, "not just for the medicine, for seeing us." "Thank you for letting me," I whispered back. We exchanged numbers, the right ones this time, and I drove home with this strange, unfamiliar feeling blooming in my chest. It took me until I was back in my penthouse to realize what it was. Hope. Over the next week, TJ and I talked every day. We met for coffee while Chloe was in school. We went to the park on Saturday, and I pushed her on the swings while she shrieked with laughter. He cooked dinner for me in his small kitchen. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, And it was the best meal I'd had in years because it came with conversation and connection instead of business negotiations. I kept my full identity vague, introducing myself as just Simone who worked in fashion. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I told myself I just wanted him to know me first, before the complications of my world entered the picture. Chloe started calling me Miss Simone, and the way she'd light up when she saw me made me feel more valuable than any Forbes list ever had. TJ would look at me sometimes with this expression of wonder, like he couldn't quite believe I was real, and I wanted to tell him I felt the same way about him, about this life he'd built, about how he'd taken tragedy and transformed it into this beautiful, intentional existence focused on what actually mattered. But reality has a way of crashing in, doesn't it? 2 weeks into whatever we were building, TJ called me sounding different, distant, cold. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words landed like stones in my stomach. He came over to my place for the first time. I couldn't avoid it anymore, and I watched his face as he stepped into my penthouse. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the designer furniture, the original artwork, the life I'd built that suddenly felt like a museum instead of a home. "I Googled you," he said quietly, pulling out his phone. On the screen was a magazine cover, me in a couture gown at Fashion Week, the headline calling me the new queen of luxury fashion. Another article about my net worth. A profile calling me one of the most powerful women in the industry. "You're not just Simone who works in fashion, you're Simone Laurent. You're everywhere." "I was going to tell you," I said, but the words sounded weak even to me. "When?" His voice cracked with hurt. "When exactly were you planning to mention that you're basically royalty and I'm just some regular guy struggling to make ends meet? What is this to you? Some kind of escape? A story you'll tell your friends about slumming it with the working class?" "That's not fair," I said, but he wasn't done. "You know what's not fair? Letting me fall for you without knowing the truth. Letting Chloe get attached to you. Do you know what she said yesterday? She asked if you could be her mommy. And I had to explain that some people are just passing through, and we should be grateful for the time we get. But I didn't know I'd have to teach her that lesson with you." His words cut deeper than anything I'd experienced in business. "I didn't tell you because this is what happens," I said, hearing my voice rise. "The second people know who I am, I stop being human. I become a bank account or an opportunity or a fantasy. For 2 weeks you saw me, just me, and that was worth more than everything in this penthouse." "But it wasn't real," he said softly. "You're living in a world I can't even imagine, Simone. What happens when you get bored of playing house? When you remember you're supposed to be at galas and fashion shows, not pushing kids on swings? Chloe's already lost one mother. I can't let her lose another." He left and I didn't stop him. What could I say? That he was wrong? But maybe he wasn't. Maybe I had been playing pretend, and the real world, my world, was too different from his for this to ever work. For 2 weeks I threw myself back into work. I approved designs, attended meetings, made decisions that affected hundreds of employees, but everything felt muted, like I was moving through water. My assistant asked if I was okay, and I realized she'd never asked me that before. Had I ever not been okay where anyone could see it? Then Chloe's school sent me an email. I'd gotten added to TJ's contacts as an emergency backup, and they were reminding all families about the first-grade musical. I stared at that email for an hour, reading the date and time over and over. I knew I should delete it, should respect the boundary TJ had drawn. But that night, I dreamed about Chloe asking if I could be her mommy, and I woke up with tears on my face and clarity in my heart. Some things are worth fighting for, some things are worth the risk. The day of the musical, I left my office early. I didn't wear designer clothes or expensive jewelry, just jeans and a simple sweater. I pulled my hair back in a ponytail and drove to that elementary school with my heart pounding. The auditorium was packed with parents and grandparents, everyone's phones out ready to record their babies. I slipped into the back row just as the lights dimmed. And there she was, Chloe in a flower costume, singing about sunshine and growing with all the seriousness of someone performing at Carnegie Hall. She was beautiful and confident and so full of life, and I felt tears streaming down my face because I'd almost walked away from this. From her, from the man sitting in the third row recording every second, his face full of pride and love. When the show ended and the lights came up, TJ turned around, maybe sensing someone watching, and our eyes met across that crowded auditorium. I saw surprise, then something that looked like hope, then fear. Before he could decide what to do, Chloe spotted me. "Miss Simone!" she shrieked, running up the aisle in her flower costume. She crashed into me with the force of a small hurricane, and I scooped her up, breathing in her kid shampoo smell and feeling pieces of myself slot back into place. TJ approached slowly, and other parents were watching now, curious. I didn't care. I set Chloe down gently and looked at the man I'd fallen in love with over wrong number texts and midnight medicine runs and dinners that cost nothing but meant everything. "I'm not here as a CEO," I said, loud enough that the nosy parents could hear, quiet enough that it was still intimate. "I'm not here as Simone Laurent from the magazines. I'm here as a woman who's been lost for a long time, and you two helped me find my way back to what matters. I'm here as someone who misses you both so much it physically hurts, who wants to learn how to be present instead of perfect, who needs what you've given me, something real and honest and worth more than anything I've ever built." TJ's eyes were shining. "Simone, my life is complicated. I'm a package deal. I've got a 6-year-old in debt, and I'm never going to fit into your world smoothly." "I don't want smooth," I said, taking his hand. "I want real. I want dinosaur chicken nuggets and school musicals and someone who sees past the image to the person. Your world isn't less than mine, TJ. It's more. It's what I've been missing." Chloe tugged on my sweater. "Does this mean you can be my mommy for real?" I looked at TJ, asking permission, and he nodded with tears running down his face. I knelt down to Chloe's level. "If your daddy and I can figure this out together, I would be honored to be part of your family, if you'll have me." She threw her arms around my neck, and over her shoulder, TJ mouthed, "I love you." "I love you too," I whispered back, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. That was 6 months ago. I'm not going to tell you it's been easy, because that would be a lie. Blending our worlds has taken work and compromise and a lot of honest conversations. I've had to learn that success isn't just measured in profit margins, and TJ's had to learn that accepting help isn't the same as accepting charity. We're teaching each other, growing together. I cut back my hours to make time for soccer practices and homework help. He's expanded his design business with my support, but on his terms, at his pace, maintaining the flexibility he needs for Chloe. And Chloe? She's thriving with a village around her, calling me her bonus mom and teaching me that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you every single day. So that's how a wrong text became the rightest thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes God sends you exactly what you need in the most unexpected package. Sometimes the thing you've been searching for finds you at midnight when you're not even looking. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see the real you, not the version you've perfected for the world, but the messy, uncertain, hopeful person underneath. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor and smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose love, to choose authenticity, to choose what matters over what looks good on paper. Subscribe for more real talk stories about life, love, and finding your way home. And comment below. I want to know, do you believe in divine accidents? Because honey, after everything I've been through, I absolutely do. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. Remember, your worth isn't in your bank account or your title or what the world sees. It's in how you show up for the people who matter. It's in the small moments that become your whole life. Stay blessed, stay open, and maybe, just maybe, answer that wrong number text. You never know where it might lead. I'll see you in the next one.